everyone, I'm Josh, and today I'm going to be talking about speciation. So, what does that mean? Basically, I'm talking about how you can start from one species and get another one. So this is the famous, I didn't even know how to pronounce this. Phylogenetic tree. I never know how to pronounce that word. And it shows how you start from one common ancestor, and from that we spread out and get basically every animal and creature that is alive today. So and the idea is that every one of these points, one species will, for one reason or another, diverge into two. So here's a quick quiz. Which of these groups of animals are in the same species? So we have these spiders, we have these lovely creatures, and those guys over there. So which of these, let's take a vote. So who here thinks these are in the same species? Raise your hand if you do.
Is this a trick question?
It's a question either.
Okay.
Alright, and who thinks these are? And over there. Okay, so yeah, it turns out only these spiders are actually in the same species of spider. So even though they look very different, the reason why they're the same species is they're able to breed, and they're able to produce viable offspring that are able to breed themselves. So this contrasts very specifically with the horse and the donkey, because even though they're able to breed and have a child, the mule is not able to reproduce. So we say these are in different species, and of course, I think that's a chimpanzee and the human. Yeah, they're definitely not same species. Yeah. I know someone might say you're as dumb as an ape, but doesn't mean you're the same species. However, and another thing is that humans have not evolved from chimpanzees. In fact, we both share a common ancestor. So if people say, why haven't monkeys evolved since we split off? In fact, like, they have, basically the chimpanzee would look at least as different from our common ancestor as we do. So now, next question is, how does speciation occur? So this was actually a really big problem that evolutionists had to face a couple of decades ago, because the fossil record does have generally a lot of gaps in between several species, and these gaps have been used as an argument against evolution. So the way this has actually been addressed in a 1972 paper. So prior to this paper, basically the only view for evolution is it kind of slowly goes at a relatively constant pace. Species diverge and then slowly change. So if you look at it this way, then you would expect there to be not much of a difference between right before the species diverge and right after. And this would show up commonly we would expect to see that in the fossil records. However, the explanation as described in the 1972 paper is called punctuated equilibrium. And this idea is that species are relatively constant with still some changes going on, but for the most part, the reason when they diverge when there's a fairly small concentration of animals, and there could be major events that would cause them to change. So since there's a smaller amount of animals, and the changes will happen relatively quickly, so we wouldn't expect to see as many fossil records of these. So so the whole goal of trying to find a fossil record to link, let's say, monkey or primate descendants from thousands of years ago all the way up to us, to try to find all of the missing links at these points. Basically, for the fossil records, it's not even really a useful thing to try to do. Now, this one theory hasn't been completely replaced by the other. There's still some debate, and both theories have virtue. but at the same time, you can't just say that it hasn't been addressed by scientists at all. Here's an excerpt from the paper that I was talking about. So here it talks about here it talks about basically the method of the comparison between the older theory and the newer one, and it also talks about how speciation generally occurs due to geographic constraints. And because of this, I will explain geographic isolation as a cause, or as a possible potential cause for speciation to be induced. So these next few slides, basically most of my information has been taken directly from this website, and it's going to be talking about how species of fruit flies are able to diverge in nature. And it's a very simplified explanation, and it's not meant to say how something has actually happened, more of how it could happen. So here we start off on a nice place. We got some fruit flies eating some lovely bananas, laying their eggs in this delicious mushy fruit. When all of a sudden, disaster strikes, hurricane comes, washes the banana over to a nearby island. So now right now there's no way that the eggs and any fruit flies laid in this banana could interact with all the fruit flies on that mainland. So now we have the main population and a separate isolated population over on the islands. So, but at this point, just remember, they're all the same species. Speciation has not occurred at all. However, over time, the fruit flies on the island and the fruit flies on the mainland, they will mate with each other, but there won't be any cross-breeding because there's no way for them to interact with each other. So this can go on, and these species these animals are going to be in different conditions, subject to different environmental constraints. So on the island, it might be drier, more sandy, different fruits available, different mating habits could develop than on the mainland. So by the time another hurricane comes and brings the fruit flies back, some fruit flies back over to mainland, we see that the island fruit flies and the mainland fruit flies don't even want to interact with each other. And this is because, so now they'll prefer to mate with each other, and even if they were to cross-mate and crossbreed, the children they're so different that they won't be able to produce viable offspring. So because of that, at this point, we will say that speciation has occurred. So the other methods that could cause speciation are fairly similar concepts. So for the first one, parapatric speciation, it's when you have a small number of individuals that are separated from the group, and by chance, some of these individuals have very rare genes that if they were contained within the whole group, the rare genes wouldn't have emerged because they'd be suppressed by the overall genetic variants. There's parapatric speciation, and for here there are no specific barriers preventing the animals and plants from mating, but there's still some geographical constraints that would basically keep them from breeding as much. So if you have a giant plain, then animals all the way on the east and all the way on the west probably won't be able to interact with each other. So if you have that, speciation can occur. And then there's also sympatric speciation. So this one is not, in fact, based on geography. So so there could be things other than geography that induce speciation, such as, let's say, the two groups of the same species that tend to prefer different types of food, and because of this, they might choose mates that like the same food as them. And if this goes on long enough, speciation could also occur. So now when you hear all these theoreticals, could it happen? How might it theoretically happen? You might want to ask yourself, does it actually occur? So one quote that I found online was, "No one has yet observed the development from beginning to end of a new plant or animal species in nature." And that's from this source here. So now, Does that mean that speciation doesn't occur in nature? No, because it just means, as AJ described earlier, that it doesn't occur in nature fast enough to be able to observe all of it happening in one human lifetime. And another quote says, selection for reproductive isolation between closely related populations is fundamentally different from the process involved in local adaptation. The latter entails only minor genetic adjustments, whereas speciation frequently involves a reorganization of some crucial components in the genetic system that results in a quantum step towards the origin of interspecific differences. So I know sometimes creationists might talk about differentiate between I think it's small evolution and like a larger scale evolution, or micro scale and what is it?
Macro.
Yeah, micro and macro evolution. So here, speciation, I guess according to their definition, would be macroevolution, and it has been found to happen in nature and in the lab. So, speciation in the lab. So even though we're not able to see it in nature, speciation in nature completely through, we can see evidence for it, we can see a lot of it taking place, but we can't see all of it happening at once. We're actually able to induce speciation in a lab. So here is a famous experiment. The image is from Wikipedia, of course. So over here, this shows how speciation can be induced starting with a single species of fruit flies. You take them, you split them up into two separate areas. You give one group basically starch-based food, another one maltose-based food. And in only 8 generations or so, you're actually able to have 2 separate groups that will have different mating preferences, and basically you will have created 2 separate species. And even though some people might say that we've never seen speciation occur, in fact, we have seen it. It's just in a lab is when we've seen all of it.